Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake to tell you you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Help us say it louder, won't you? Join us at patreon.com/politics by Jake. All right. Everybody, hi, I am Jake. This is Politics by Jake, and it is Monday, June 30th, and we're at the end of another month. Wow, 6 months of the year gone already. How time flies. And I am your reporter and your political commentarist. You're kind of student historian. I'm kind of a student of history, and I always have been. History has always fascinated me. I've always been interested in it. And one of the reasons that we talk about history on this show, by the way, is because and I say, one of the things you will, periodically hear me say is that history is as important as quantum physics or quantum mechanics. And you might say, Jake, why is it that you say such a thing? How crazy are you? Jake, you're just crazy. Well, no, Jake's not crazy, and I'll tell you why. With history, if you have a knowledge of history, you can know where we as a people have been. And therefore, you will know where we have come to as a people, where you stand in the present. And when you see something that had, say, like a good outcome in past history, you can know that because these things recycle. Everything recycles. What's the old proverb or the old saying, there's nothing new under the sun? I think that's true. I think pretty much it's just different versions of the same thing. So if you know that something has happened that's good, you're going to be okay with that, and that's going to guide you. And it's going to make it so that you can use your quantum physics and your quantum mechanics and all the other marvelous things that this society, this world, this earth has created for the betterment of mankind, human civilization, and it's going to be okay. And you're going to say, I want that. But if you see something that has already happened before, like, say, fascism, which happened, well, honestly, I would say it's 100 years ago now. Mussolini came to power in 1922. He was preaching this stuff before that time. We're now in the year 2025, so it's been 100 years. So if you go back in your 20th century history and you see that there was fascism, and you recognize what fascism is, and fortunately you have Jake here on Politics by Jake, who will every Monday and Friday at 7 a.m. Isn't this cool how I'm getting this in, getting the promo in? Every Monday and Friday, 7 a.m. on KCAA, the flagship station in Loma Linda, California. We're doing this, and we're talking about history. And when things like this comes up, like when fascism comes up, Jake tells you, because I know. I mean, when I go to when I want to get something done, when there's a leak in some pipe in my house, I basically don't do it myself. I basically go to a professional, and I am a professional as far as these things are concerned. And it is no shame at all. To do such a thing either for your plumbing or for your electricity or your auto mechanics. Got to have a good auto mechanic, guys. There are certain things in life you've got to have. One of the things you've got to have is a good auto mechanic. And this is no shame. And I am your history mechanic. I am Jake, Politics by Jake. Boy, that was great the way I got that plug in there in that promo. But so and are guided because of what happened in the past, that fascism didn't have a good outcome. And it ended in a lot of tears and a lot of blood and a lot of sweat and a lot of expenditure of human, physical, mental, psychological, emotional, and psychic energy. And that that many millions, tens of millions of lives were lost, and there was great human misery. So you go and you say, I listened to Jake on Politics by Jake, and he said this was fascism, and now he's pointed that out again, and I'm thinking, boy, I don't want to go down that road again. And see, this is it. This is the exact reason why you want to know history, and you want someone who understands that and can inform you of that. And that's the show, 7 a.m. or thereabouts, whenever we come on the air after the commercials that the station does. And of course, if you've got the podcast, you can just go to my page at Politics by Jake, or rather kcaradio.com/Politics by Jake. And I'm on the schedule there too. You can just go to the regular page and you can click on the Monday or Friday schedule, and there I am. You'll see me. I'm right next. I come on after Stephanie Miller. She's on at 6 a.m. At 7 a.m. I come on. There I am. And you can do that, and you will know. And you will be guided by past history mistakes, and you will not do those again. And this is what we do. And this is what I'm doing right now. And I'm bringing you our usual bi-weekly, because, Mondays and Fridays, strategic summary and overview with a rundown on the main developments to the extent that we can. There's so much going on, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. That it's tough to get to them. I'm messing with different formats as far as the way I present the show, so I can more adequately do the thing that I tell you every Monday and Friday that I'm going to do, which is to give you a strategic rundown, a summary, and an overview of the main developments. And also what we do is we want you to have an idea of how you, a person of goodwill and intelligence, how you can intervene and how you can try to improve the world process, and to be aware of things and to act in ways that will advance the cause of human civilization. See, I just said this. So here we are. And I'm convinced. I'm an intelligent guy. You guys, my listeners, I know you're listening to Politics by Jake, so obviously you're intelligent people. People of intelligence can intervene to try to improve the world process, to be aware of things, and to act in ways that will advance the cause of human civilization. So here we are right now, and it's, like I said, it's Monday morning at approximately 7 a.m., a few minutes past. And I just wanted to say, before I get into the other stuff, there's a lot of other stuff, by the way. In this time of things are moving very fast. You have operators like Donald Trump and his merry coterie of fascist operatives, clingers, hangers-on, lumpen. And remember, lumpen is the German word that means rags. It was used by Marx in his writing with Engels of the book called Das Kapital in 1849. And it must seem to you, my listeners, this is my personable pitch. I mean personable now, by the way. But no, seriously. To you, my listeners, it must seem difficult. I was talking to you the other day about how people seem so inwardly compelled by their situation that they don't even seem to have the capacity to ask you how you were doing. You can go up to them and say, "Hi, Jake, how are you doing?" And they'll tell you, but they don't return the favor. And this is kind of courtesy, isn't it? And it's not something that I'm offended by, but it's just courtesy. It's just, and I don't even want to go into the realm of decently, because I don't want to there to be any idea in people's minds that if I say to somebody, to my listeners, hey, how are you guys doing today? And you tell me, but then you don't return the favor and ask with human concern how it is that I am doing today, that you are somehow, therefore, indecent. That's not what I'm saying about that. But it's a preoccupation with one's situation and status and category and placement in life that makes it so that people are so inwardly compelled, and I know you are, that they don't even seem to think, or I should say they, as I just defined you guys as Politics by Jake, you guys are really intelligent. But they're entirely willing to be drawn out. And this is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. If you think owning things in your own name keeps you in control, think again. In today's world, lawsuits, taxes, and predators are everywhere. That's why the smart money hides in plain sight. We help you to build legal firewalls, LLCs, land trusts, private contracts that protect your assets while keeping you invisible. Call Twain Consulting today at 310-997-2204. Find us on Facebook at Twain Consulting. That's facebook.com/Twain Consulting. Protect what you've built before someone else takes it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Are you tired of the noise and the spin? Do you want the real story behind the headlines? I'm Jake, and this is Politics by Jake, where I tell you what they won't. And now we're going even deeper, and I need your help to keep doing it. Join me on Patreon and support independent political analysis that doesn't pull punches. You'll get insider breakdowns, you'll get bonus clips, and first access to new content. So go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake. That's patreon.com/Politics by Jake. No filters, no fluff, just the truth. Let's do this together. And this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. Hell, sometimes it all comes, if you ask them, it all comes fairly tumbling out of them. And there's that old joke about what is the definition of a bore, B-O-R-E. And I say that because there's actually, I think there's an animal called a boar. But a bore is, and the definition of a bore, according to this person, is someone who, when you ask them how they're doing, they tell you. I always thought that was a great joke. But they're entirely willing to be drawn out. Sometimes it comes tumbling out of them when you ask, because they're so preoccupied and they are so inwardly moved, and probably nobody's asking them either. So you get that and you do that, and it kind of when I hear it, it kind of makes me feel bad, even at the same time when I'm, trying to stop them in this tidal wave of stuff that they're talking about. But they can't rise to the occasion of returning the favor, even nominally. And nominally would be to say, like I said, to ask you how they are. They can't even do that. And the reason is that they are so compelled. And I want you to know. I get it. But, we're here on KCA in this incredible, still all too rare opportunity. And I, as your host, know this. And this is one of the reasons why I'm talking to you about this right now, rather than the other things, which we'll get to. Don't worry, we'll get to it. That we are graced to come together, you and I as the host, you as the listeners, to come across the airwaves, to do shows, and to connect with you, the listening audience. I consider that we are one, and that we are equally graced. I, for one, want you, my listeners, to know just how much I appreciate the opportunity And I appreciate how that you are obviously out there because the books with regard to listenership, we know what people are listening to. You're obviously listening to my message and what I have to say. And I guess the next thing I would say is that all those things being true, and we having convened here and being together as we are now on Mondays and Fridays, or whenever you listen to the podcast, we're in a fight here. I don't know if you're so preoccupied, and it's no sin, it's no shame, but I'm just saying, I don't know if you're so preoccupied, so in the muck and in the mire of daily life, that you don't get it. But I'm here to tell you that we are. We're really in a fight here. This is a really serious situation that we're in. And I'm going to be talking about that, and it may even preempt some of the stuff that I had already prepared, because I'm going to take a case from the Supreme Court called Trump v. Casa Inc., and we're going to talk about that. So important is this. And notwithstanding your distraction, I know you're out there listening both on KCAA and on the podcast. You're here, and maybe for you, that's the fight. Maybe that's the fight for you. Maybe that's what you can do. That's what you can rise to, and that's good. I'm glad you're here with me, making this common cause together. But let me go further, if I may. Let me say, fight more. Fight harder. You have heard me say, and it's the truth, we have an implacable enemy. And I'm sorry to declare to you on this station, through the airwaves and in the digital media, I'm sorry to declare to you that things have gotten this way, and we have to declare some people as enemies. But the fact is that to you, or to them, you're the enemy. If you're listening to this show, I'm the enemy. And I'm not just saying that. Trump has gone on record as saying that journalists are the great enemy of the people. So I'm just not talking through my hat. You can look that up. He said that. And honestly, the ones that are coming behind him, the Steve Bannons, the Stephen Millers, and all of the rest, they're actually worse than him. Because all Trump is trying to do is stay out of jail. Because he's going to jail. If he ever lets go or has the reins of power wrested from his grasp, he's going to prison. So think about fighting more. We have this incredible outpouring, juxtaposed as it was in Trump's, now I think it's 3 weeks ago, his what I refer to as his toy tank parade, which was his military parade, which he spent approximately $93 million of your money, except for the people in Europe and elsewhere. In the United States, your money out of the Treasury of the United States was used to pay for him to make it look like he was a dictator, like Xi of mainland China, like Kim Jong-un, little rocket man of North Korea, like Putin, who he loves and admires, of the Russian Federation. This is why he did it. And when you look at the crowd that was there was nobody there. You know why? Because this is inimical and does violence to the concept of most Americans as far as their idea of government and what it should be. And at the same time, we had the No Kings demonstrations across this country, and we even had them in the world. And there were at least 13 million people. In fact, I think it was a little bit more than 13 million people who were present at these demonstrations. And there were maybe, and honestly, you have numbers all the way from 250,000, and these are all propagandistic numbers. These are all lies. To 10,000, and 10,000 is maybe getting closer, to 2,000, and that's my number because I looked at the promenade and there was nobody there. There was nobody there. And so I say 2,000. But, maybe in other areas of the city of Washington, D.C., maybe you could get it up to 10,000. But that pales compared to 13 million, in excess of 13 million. And like I say, I'm not including, when I say that, the demonstrations in Europe. I'm not including the people who were there for the demonstrations in Europe. This pales to 250,000. It pales to 10,000. It pales to 2,000. There's no comparison. 13 million compared to 250,000 compared to 10,000 compared to 2,000. There's no comparison. And you know that I have said that a fascist cabal, and this is true, a fascist cabal has obtained the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of government. And there are factions of these in the government agencies like the FBI and the CIA. And there are factions of these in the state houses as well, I am sorry to say. And you have heard me say also, and I say once again to you, my listeners, in the airways and in the podcast, that it is the institutions of our democratic republic government that will save us from fascism. And if it is not that, it is blood. That's the only thing that will bring it back. And, you have people like Keith Olbermann who are saying, let's face it, these people are not leaving in 2028. He said the only way they're going to leave, and these are his words I'm using, or I'm paraphrasing, but it's very close. These are his words. He said, you have to kick them in the balls in order to get them to leave. And, that's not untrue. I characterize it, he does, that is a more joking way to do it. I characterize it as blood because these are our freedoms. And fascism is a direct threat to our freedoms. And unless blood is shed, we will never, if these freedoms are relinquished, and they're trying every day. Part of the show I'm going to talk about Trump versus Casa Inc. and how they're trying. They're indefatigable. They're implacable. They are loyal as opposition. And they're trying every single day to destroy the democratic institutions of this country. And the institutions have to stand up now. The courts, to the extent that they can, have to stand up. And the legislators, to the extent that they can, and they're all not. I would say it's a bad situation, but it's that while you have a simple majority, it's only a simple majority. There are many, many legislators who fight against Trump. The Senate is pretty much deadlocked. The House is pretty much deadlocked. The courts have 3 justices. There you kind of have a supermajority, actually. But you have 3 justices, and I'm going to be reading segments of an opinion from one of those judges, Justice Sotomayor, with regard to the recent ruling in that and what that means. And this is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. If you think owning things in your own name keeps you in control, think again. In today's world, lawsuits, taxes, and predators are everywhere. That's why the smart money hides in plain sight. We help you to build legal firewalls, LLCs, land trusts, private contracts that protect your assets while keeping you invisible. Call Twain Consulting today at 310-997-2204. Find us on Facebook at Twain Consulting. That's facebook.com/Twain Consulting. Protect what you've built before someone else takes it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake. Do you like what you hear right now? Support the real talk then. Go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake right now. Every dollar helps fight the noise. And this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. But the institutions now have to stand up, and they have to fight. And may I say that one of the most important institutions is we the people. The people who showed up 13 million strong for the No More Kings demonstration. And the prior demonstrations, there have been demonstrations ever since he took office for this second time. But you will. And in our little corner here, of course, my corner is actually the country anymore because of the podcast, but I know where you guys are in San Bernardino County and eastern Los Angeles County, and the area that KCAA covers, 106.5 FM, 1050 on the AM, 102.3 on the FM also, is that I suggest, may I, that you fight more. Go further, fight harder. And as the old saying goes, and it's time, either get active or get radioactive. It's just that serious. And if you can't rise to that, I still appreciate you listening, because that is rising to the fight by listening to this show. And I know you're out there. I can hear you over the air. And this is Politics by Jake, and we'll be back. All right, and that was from Twain Consulting. It's actually our main sponsor of the show, and a little message from me at Patreon, and thank you guys for that. Twain Consulting, excellent stuff, excellent products and services. Highly recommend that you go with them, if I do say so myself. So now I promised that we'd talk about something very important, and this is the case of Trump v. Casa Inc. And it was just brought out, and the only opinion that's available is called a slip opinion. It's been published as a slip opinion, but it hasn't been published in any of the reporters yet. That takes more time. But when the case is decided, it's called a slip opinion, is issued, and you can find out just exactly what happened. And in the case, and this is why this is important, and this is why I wanted to talk about it, because we're coming up on some really key days in the freedom of the country and the rebirth or the new birth of the country that are just very important. And I'm talking about the new birth of freedom. I'm talking about the Civil War. I'm talking about the Reconstruction Amendments, which is basically the 13th, 14th, and 15th. And we're going to talk about the 14th to some extent later on. The 13th and the 15th, also important, but we're going to be talking about the 14th because it has to do with this. And as I said to you before, the opposition is indefatigable. They never tire. Trump has a mania about him. He seems never to sleep. This is unnatural and very concerning. And he'll be up at 1:30, 2:30, 3, 4 in the morning doing texting. And it's unnatural, it's unusual, and it's attendant upon people who have a mania and who seem to be able to keep going and going and going. And many of these people are dedicated to the proposition of, honestly, the destruction of the present Democratic and Republican. And when I say Democratic and Republican, I'm not talking about the two major political parties. I'm talking about the fact that the form of the government of the United States is that of a democratic republic. So when I say Democratic Republican, in this case, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the form of the government. That they're dedicated to the overthrow and the destruction, and 49.2% of the people voted for a man who committed insurrection and who on January 6, 2021, when there was no other way he could stay in power except by doing so, he committed legislative and violent insurrection against the United States of America, against you, the people of the United States of America. That is your president. And if you think that that hasn't been proven, and if you think that there hasn't been an analysis of that, and if you think that I'm just shooting off my mouth, I invite you to go to the case of Griswold v. Anderson, decided by the Colorado Supreme Court, and I think it was December of 2024. Or, I'm sorry, pardon me, it would be December of 2023. And it's an excellent opinion. It's long. You don't have to read it all. You can just read the parts with regard to insurrection. It's excellently done. It defines what an insurrection is. It talks about whether an insurrection is the same thing as a rebellion, and it gets into treason and so on and so forth. And it's just excellent. It's just, I have the highest praise for the justices of the Colorado Supreme Court. And the reason why is because they knew that this was going to be an issue in the 2024 election. And they knew that Trump was going to appeal this, and he did, Trump v. Anderson. That's the case that went before the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court. They knew that they had to have their legal and judicial ducks in a row, so to speak, if this was going to get taken care of. And so they did an excellent review. And you go read it. And the conclusion was, among other things, is that he committed, prosecuted, and promulgated insurrection against the United States of America. And as such, pursuant to the 14th Amendment, Part 3, or Section 3, he's ineligible to hold any public office, not merely federal, but state. So, okay, and I've talked about that on the show, and it's a periodic thing, and it's important, especially right now, because we're coming up in about a week or a few days on July 4th, Independence Day. And this is just extremely important. And also that in 1863, a great battle was fought at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in order to determine whether this country would continue and in what form it would continue. If slavery, chattel slavery, where a man can be reduced to a table or a chair or an automobile or a buggy or a building, would continue in this country, or whether we would move ahead and have a new birth of freedom. So, as I say, this is particularly important right now. And so in the case of Trump v. Casa Inc., they're at it again. They never, ever stop. You have these young firebrands. You have People like Carolyn Levitt, 27 years old, totally drunk the Kool-Aid. You have Pam Bondi, who was the Attorney General for the state of Florida, I believe, and she's now the Attorney General for the United States. Indefatigable, loyal opposition, implacable, and ideologically motivated. And you hear propaganda. They ought to call the White House, the Office of the White House Press Secretary, the Office or the Ministry of Propaganda, because that's what comes out of her mouth all the time. And Pam Bondi, as I like to call her, because she is. I mean, she's, for a 50-ish-year-old woman, she's, nice, she's got pale blonde hair, so on and so forth. She's continually doing stuff like this. And in the case, and this is one of the cases, in the case of Trump v. Casa, that's CASA Inc., the Supreme Court addressed whether federal courts have the authority to issue universal injunctions which prevent the enforcement of policies nationwide, because up to this point, any federal judge could issue an injunction, and that would have potentially universal application. So in other words, it would be binding on every state. And the court ruled that such injunctions likely exceed the equitable authority. And I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs and permutations of this. There isn't time. And I don't think you want me to tell you that much about the case. But I want to tell you just this much, which is that the court ruled that, and this is, the Supreme Court of the United States, such injunctions likely exceed the equitable authority granted to federal courts. And this decision arose from challenges to President Trump's executive order number 14160, which sought to redefine birthright citizenship. And the court's ruling, we're going to talk about that in just a minute, but let me just read this part. The court's ruling means that lower courts cannot issue injunctions that block enforcement of executive actions. And this cabal, this fascist cabal, is all about the concept of the unitary executive, which is basically that the president is a king. And he has vast powers that trump, you'll excuse the expression, that extend over every other branch of government. That's what they're into. That's what they want to do. I don't understand it. I don't understand how it's violative of the doctrine of separation of powers, which is a sacred and holy doctrine as far as this government is concerned, and want to focus all power in the executive, which basically means that they want to have a king. That's what they're pointing towards. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake to tell you you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Help us say it louder, won't you? Join us at patreon.com/Politics by Jake. And this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. That's what they're heading towards. Never think that they will say, oh, we will do this, and then we won't do any more. They want it all. Trust me, they want it all. So the court's ruling means that lower courts cannot issue injunctions that block enforcement of executive actions beyond the specific plaintiffs involved in the lawsuit. Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissented, and she expressed concern that this ruling undermines the judiciary's role in checking executive power. She argued that the government's request for a partial stay of the injunctions was a strategic move, and I agree, to avoid proving the constitutionality of the executive order. And this is a tactic that this court uses all the time. They take an issue that is not really the issue that they should be deciding on. Like, for example, in the case of Trump v. Anderson, they didn't decide. In fact, they completely sidestepped, and silence implies consent and agreement. They completely sidestepped the issue that the Colorado Supreme Court was involved with, and rightly so, that the Colorado Supreme Court was involved with was, is Trump eligible? Can he stand for public office? And part of that was determining whether he committed insurrection, because that's the operative clause of the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, that if you've committed insurrection, if you've participated in insurrection, if you've committed insurrection, you cannot stand or be awarded any public office. And I mean, and that means dog catcher. I mean, if there were such, I'm not sure there is. I think maybe there's such a city position as that. Let's reduce it to that, shall we? You could not stand for election as city dog catcher. You couldn't, of a city or a town, because you've committed insurrection against the United States of America. And you can't do it. And that's what it was. And Trump v. Anderson completely ignored that. And they just went on and they based their decision basically on this. They said, well, you know, no state, and this is false. This is a canard. This is phony baloney. This is misdirection. They basically said no state has the power to keep a candidate from a federal public office. And this isn't what, and this is what they based their decision on. And so they ruled for Trump, but this wasn't the issue. They avoided the issue. They never said, which you would think, wouldn't you, that Trump didn't commit insurrection. They didn't say that at all. They didn't talk about it at all. And you know why? Because the Colorado Supreme Court had locked that up so tight, there was no way that they were getting out of that. And so, as this court does so often, they just simply ignored it. And they said, well, all right, we won't decide on that issue. We'll decide on some other phony baloney issue, which it was, because, listen, my fellow listeners, in the history of this country, people are disqualified for state and federal office all the time. It happens all the time. It's an entirely common thing. And there was, this issue was not before the court. It was something they made up because they're fascist or supporting of fascism. And I mean, they are. I've talked about this on other shows. I've talked about Justice Alito. I've talked about Justice Clarence Thomas. And they absolutely are fascist because they support fascism by their actions, by their deeds, if not, in fact, by their words. They support it. I can give you specific instances of it. I have already done so on this show. And we'll do it again if called upon or if it seems appropriate to do. But they're fascist. They support and will overlook a fascist cabal, a fascist candidate, because they want him to be able to run. They use phony baloney comments like, we don't think that. And unfortunately, the Democrats, and don't get me started about this brand of Democrats that we have today, we don't think that Trump, who is a fascist, who committed insurrection, violent insurrection, tried to overthrow the United States of America by legislative means and by violent means, we don't think that he should be subject to the restrictions of the Constitution. We think that the people ought to be allowed to decide. What a bunch of nonsense. These people are idiots. If in fact they believe this, and they don't. They're just making it up. They're phoning it in because they had to figure out some way to thwart this case, to thwart the 14th Amendment, to thwart a key part, and the 14th Amendment is just so much a key part of the new birth of freedom in the United States, that the Union soldiery died for. The figure, I think, is something like, it's a lot. I mean, I think, and I am just now, just figuring off the top of my head, somebody call into the station if they want, and will give me the correct figures. But I think it's somewhere in between 600,000 and 700,000 people died, and a lot of Union soldiery died. Something like 400,000. And this is one of the reasons why they're called Grant a Butcher, because there's kind of a disparity. It seems that more Union soldiers died than Confederate soldiery. And there's a disparity, and there's the other things that you can talk about, the copperheads of those days who were Northerners who supported the South. Basically, they supported the South, and they wanted appeasement, and they wanted slavery to continue, and so on and so forth. And they were there, their existence, and they ran McClellan, who was a Union general that Lincoln had basically not sacked, but had taken away from command of the Army of the Potomac because he's too timid, he's too cautious. And once again, this is another story. Appropriate to tell, but McClellan was out of command by this time. In July of 1863, he was not in command anymore. Grant was in command, and Meade was the general who actually had just been installed as the general who was on the scene at Gettysburg, and who basically conducted the overall operations. There were other generals who were there before Meade got there. Meade got there literally, I think, on the first day of the battle, or the day before the battle started. So it's really a pretty interesting story, actually. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. If you think owning things in your own name keeps you in control, think again. In today's world, lawsuits, taxes, and predators are everywhere. That's why the smart money hides in plain sight. We help you to build legal firewalls, LLCs, land trusts, private contracts that protect your assets while keeping you invisible. Call Twain Consulting today at 310-997-2204. Find us on Facebook at Twain Consulting. That's facebook.com/Twain Consulting. Protect what you've built before someone else takes it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Are you tired of the noise and the spin? Do you want the real story behind the headlines? I'm Jake, and this is Politics by Jake, where I tell you what they won't. And now we're going even deeper, and I need your help to keep doing it. Join me on Patreon and support independent political analysis that doesn't pull punches. You'll get insider breakdowns, you'll get bonus clips, and first access to new content. So go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake. That's patreon.com/Politics by Jake. No filters, no fluff, just the truth. Let's do this together. And this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. And as I said, all of these things are coming up now. I mean, this is Independence Day coming up. If it's entirely appropriate at any time to talk about these things, but especially now. And so there were a lot of casualties. And these people died for this. They died for the freedom of the United States. This is not something to take lightly. Whatever else you do, however else you enjoy the freedoms of this country on these special days like Memorial Day and like Independence Day and like Veterans Day, for example. And you should, because freedom means enjoying the blessings and benefits of freedom. Ball games. I love to watch ball games. Baseball. Whatever else it means that. And we need to specifically honor those fallen because they died for that. And it is that which Trump attempted to overthrow on January 6, 2021, when there was no other way for him to stay in power. It is that which he did. And he's president now. And guess what? He's continuing to try. So Justice Sotomayor dissented. She expressed concern that this ruling undermines the judiciary's role in checking executive power. She argued that the government's request for a partial stay in the injunction was a strategic move. I agree. To avoid proving constitutionality of the executive order. Like I said, they do it all the time. They did it in this situation with Trump v. Anderson, where they cooked up the phony thing about a state not having the power or authority to have a federal candidate removed from the ballot. But this happens all the time, like I said. Justice Sotomayor further emphasized that every court that reviewed the executive order 14160 has deemed it not merely constitutional, not kind of constitutional, not, well, sort of, kind of unconstitutional, but has deemed it patently. And that means incontrovertibly. That means plain on its face unconstitutional. Patently unconstitutional. And she warned. She warned that limiting the ability of the courts to issue universal injunctions, which, if you think about it for a minute, that's something that an administration that was inimical to the rule of law, inimical to the idea of the separation of powers, that would be something that they would want to do. Limit the ability of courts to issue universal injunctions. And that this could allow unconstitutional policies to be enforced without judicial oversight. Because if you can do it in one place, you can do it in another. Say, okay, well, you can only do it here. You can only do it, say, like in Alabama. But we can do it in Minnesota because the injunction isn't universal. It doesn't apply to that. So we can do that, right? We could do it in North Dakota, couldn't we? Yeah. This is the idea, see? Limiting the ability of courts to issue universal injunctions could allow unconstitutional policies to be enforced without judicial oversight. And this is Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake. Do you like what you hear right now? Support the real talk then. Go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake right now. Every dollar helps fight the noise. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake.